Another wasn't exactly scary. In fact, I can't remember the last time I shit my pants over anything. Okay, let's cut the crap here. Of course I've been scared from horror films. I watched The Exorcist when I was fucking 5. You have no idea what that does to you. The trouble is, as much as I wish it did, anime just can't scare me. The trouble is it's not real. Neither are the horror films, but they are played out in our 3D reality. That is a statement I have a feeling I'm going to get bashed for. Is another good, extremely best horror anime I've ever watched, but it gets its qualities because of its psychological nature. Now then, ladies and gents, let's review this beast of a show.
I'm Sakakibara from the 9th grade's class 3. I just transferred here.
People who have watched me long enough will know that I like me some roller coaster anime. Actually, I love them. Shows that seem to twist, turn, and often plummet you like you're a fucking ragdoll. It's my favourite method of storytelling just because of the effect that it creates. Nothing is worse than watching a bland, predictable show. I just don't take anything away from it. Another seems to hit the nail on its head with this concept. I found myself watching 4 episodes at a time just because I couldn't wait to find out what happened in the next. The story revolves around a high school student transferring to class 3 in North High, which was an extremely shady school to begin with. However, something becomes apparent that makes it all the stranger. A girl that only he seems to be aware of. You'd probably expect her to just be the unpopular girl. It's a lot more sinister than that. How does this mystery progress? Well, that is up to you to find out. Another sets up a really dense, dark atmosphere, and while yes, it does often take massive turns, almost transforming it into an upbeat show, I actually enjoyed this setup. Personally, for me, it is unmatched by any other anime series. That's a big statement to make, and I doubt many of you are going to believe me because of some of the outrageous scores I've pulled out of my arse. It uses the fact that it is serialized to its advantage by constantly leaving you on a massive cliffhanger, obviously making you want to find out more and more, which actually is key for a good psychological show, with sprinkles of horror, or for some of you might find it legitimately scary. The best part is it's not a false sense of it being good. Fundamentally, it has amazing screenplay and writing, especially when you realise it's only 13 episodes long, and it is as metaphoric, symbolic, and thought-provoking as it was. For example, that perfectly implemented overview of the town in the beginning, pay attention to the end and you will notice they did something pretty goddamn clever. I'm not going to be some dickhead elitist. Naturally, not everyone is going to enjoy this show, but there is a slight difference in a show being good and a show being enjoyable. Again, some will disagree with that, but hopefully you do understand what I mean. At the core basic level, everything in Another works extremely well blended together to make a progressive storyline that ends up with a massive amount of questions unanswered, but they didn't really need to be. Plus, I hear there's a second season coming anyway, if you are one of those people that just needs everything to be clear as crystal. It even has a beach episode, and still seems to pull it off without cocking everything up. The director wasn't exactly holding back on skin either. This isn't a show for some casual sitting down time, so that is why I say this show is not for everyone. It's psychological and immersive, especially when you watch it alone with a surround system. More on that later. Coming back to what I mentioned earlier, Another isn't necessarily scary in a traditional sense. Bear in mind that's completely open to interpretation, and I'm not saying go and screen Another at your local kindergarten. For me, horror is something so very hard to crack in general, let alone in animated form, because it just seems to turn into a shitty bloodbath that almost has the adverse effect from what the writer originally intended. Don't get me wrong, it has got gore, psychopathic faces, and the rest of it, but it goes a lot further than that, and yes, being an anime, you can probably already guess that it has its little quirks all the way through. However, that may have actually made it better, at least for me anyway. It's like a gloomy puzzle that you really want to solve. I'm not gonna go and pretend that this series is free of plot holes. At parts it can be confusing even after the explanations, but even keeping a sharp eye on everything, I often found myself forgetting the little mistakes because of the superb job the series does with setting up its atmospheric surroundings. Now here is where my feelings get a bit mixed. On one hand, the majority of characters did have good design, especially Miyazaki. Despite her cold outer shell, I felt genuinely sorry for her. She could be upbeat but yet so dramatic at the same time, without it seeming like bullshit. Moving on to our main protagonist Sakibara, he has emotions instead of his character being sort of an exploring body for the world. It's hard to explain, but I guess I'll leave it at he was a genuine good lead role. Even a lot of the close supporting roles I enjoyed, despite the majority of them mainly being a cliche for a typical anime group of characters. They just felt alive and real. The best way I can describe it is they didn't feel like anime characters, more like real people depicted in an imaginary storyline. They could be genuinely real teenagers. I liked Class 3 despite them all appearing like fucking crazy bitches through some parts. That's what fear looks like, kinda. Subtract the phenomena and you would get a typical Japanese class, and that is why I honestly do believe Another is fantastic in the way that it designed most of its characters. Okay, there are a few that I really had no connection with, but not even my favourite shows can do that because effectively it would make it bloody boring. What can I say? When a show is animated by PA Works, you go in expecting it to be a visual masterpiece. This was done by the same people who did Angel Beats after all. You can complain all you like about the ending, but that show was just flawless in the animation department. If Another didn't have as good animation as it did, it would not be nearly as submersive as it was. It played a massive role in it, as did the music. Another seems to use an animated version of color correction to make everything look as melodramatic as it possibly can be. That's not a bad thing considering its genre. Furthermore, linking back to the characters, their look for some reason just really impressed me, especially Mei Misaki, who could be so kawaii, which I still can't say with a straight face for some reason, and yet dark at the same time. Water looked amazing, fire looked amazing, hell even wind looked so goddamn nice. The backgrounds could drop ever so slightly at times, but that really is a tiny complaint, considering just how awesome they were most of the time. What creates a perfect soundtrack? Well, that's actually a good question. I've skimmed over it before in my other reviews, but to summarize, it should be a catalyst. Whoever decided on the individual tracks for Another is a fucking god. Seriously, this show has one of the best soundtracks and even sound effects selections I've ever heard, even comparing it to stuff outside of anime. It is creepy, but that is kinda the point in the first place. I'm not gonna listen to this on the bus in the morning just because Beats have some of the shittiest sound isolation, so everyone would hear me and judge me like I'm insane. Not that I care what people think. Okay, I do, but to be honest, it's not really my style. It can blend low and high tones to create suspense, terror, and even anxiety. Even the opening was bloody brilliant, even though I refused to look at the lyrics because it would probably change my mind completely. Another is pretty much flat out awesome in every area. It has a few slip-ups here and there, but overall it delivers a piece that I guarantee you will watch till the end. I highly recommend this to anyone that isn't afraid to jump headfirst into the horror genre. And on the flip side, I don't recommend this to the faint-hearted, as even though I didn't find it scary, undoubtedly some of you will. Another receives a final score from me of 8.3 and a recommendation with an asterisk. For alternate blood-filled horror shows, I recommend Higurashi, and if the art style is not really for you, then Corpse Party, although the story is not nearly as good as it is mostly just a bloodbath. That's all for today's review of Another. Follow me on Twitter at AnimeRuss if you want to be anified, and of course subscribe if you haven't already, because if you've stuck to the end of this video, then there's a good chance you are going to like the rest of the stuff that I have produced and will continue to produce. This has been Russ, or the Anime Planet. Crack open some, whatever you enjoy, and as always, have a great night or day.